if Vingegaard gets rinsed at this race, I don't know that actually means it's all over for him for the Tour.
Right, Dane Cash, welcome to the show.
I like that you're starting off with that spicy anti-sprinter take there, Johnny.
I've been sitting on it for a while, and the boss is potentially away this week, hovering.
Yeah, I don't think he would disagree, actually. I feel like he would be on board.
He actually wrote that in his article yesterday, so I don't
think
he would be on your side, yeah.
Look at that. We've assimilated. Only one of us is necessary. When the big cuts come with the AI takeover, we can have half a job each. Kit Nicholson, we heard your voice, so
Hello.
Welcome back to the show. I've got to behave myself because I am technically hosting this show, which is a shame. So I've got to put my adult clothes on and my adult voice. But let's start with that opening stage of the Dauphiné, which I didn't see coming. I don't know if you guys saw coming, but if anyone else didn't witness it, could someone tell me what we saw, if it's possible to put into words?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was deep in a Tour of Britain wrap thinking, it'd be fine to just tune in for the last 10K, you know? In fact, I tuned in for the last 6K just as Jonas Vingegaard was in an attacking mood. There'd been attacks going since like 35K out from everyone, including Tadej Pogačar. Fred Wright got in on the fun. He was solo for a while. That was awesome. But yeah, so 6K to go. Jonas Vingegaard went on the move. His teammates, including Mathieu Jorgensen, had been having some fun as well. But when Vingegaard went, that's when the move stuck. Pogačar was right onto his wheel, as you can imagine. Van der Poel followed. Santiago Buitrago popped up, and then Evenepoel bridged across. And the five of them were going for it for the finish line. As Little Trek and I think Soudal or Alpecin were trying to bring them back for one of the few opportunities for sprinter. They were so close to being caught on the line. In fact, Buitrago finished 18th, so that shows you how close they were.
Really?
Yeah. And so Van der Poel opened up the sprint first, confident lad, despite the wrist injury. But Pogačar and Vingegaard came around him. So it was 1-2, Pogačar, Vingegaard on the finish line. Pogačar's celebration was very tight-lipped. I think he was as delighted as he was surprised at what had happened for the past 6 or 7K.
He was dead
already
surprised.
Yeah.
When
the quotes
are great. When we saw the after the finish line camera, when we actually had a handshake that I agreed with, where Vingegaard and Pogačar
let's
shook
not get
hands.
back into that again.
we won't get back into it. But you know, they shook hands, being like, that was fun. It was more of a that was fun handshake than anything else. And you could see Pogačar almost double take, like checking that it was Jonas Vingegaard who had attacked at a place we're not supposed to.
Seen it for the first time in a bike race.
I like the red helmet a lot.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of things at play that make it so interesting, that make it worth talking about. Because I mean, generally speaking, I don't think we're spending that much time talking about a single stage in a non-Grand Tour race on this pod, right?
True.
But it's like, first of all, the Dauphiné, it's the big tune-up for the Tour. This year, there's no question. You know, some years it's like Dauphiné or Swiss, which one?
Yeah.
This year, there's no question. All the as I think it was it you, Kit, that came up with the big boys headline? All the big boys are at the Dauphiné.
No, unfortunately, Kaylee and I basically started writing the same piece at the same time, but then I had to walk Lockie, so Kaylee beat me.
Got it. Okay, so that's a Kaylee special. I wasn't sure who picked the headline. Anyway. All the big boys are there. And also, I mean, this stage, while there were some climbs, I think they were all just Cat 4s. I don't think there was anything harder than a Cat 4 on the day.
They weren't even a kilometre long. They were steep, but they were like 600
And you don't really expect... I mean, you expect Tadej Pogačar to try to attack and win pretty much.
Yeah, my favourite thing about those shots of the attack were that they were on roundabouts. It looked like a spring classic in the outskirts of, I don't know, some Belgian town. And
in the Spring Classics, you do tend to see Van der Poel and Pogačar going
exactly.
at it, but you don't.
And that was what
Jonas
was fantastic about it.
Hello,
Vingegaard. He's got a new. Well, my headline was going to be Vingegaard has added some punch to his armory, or did Vingegaard just outsprint Van der Poel, which is debatable because I think Van der Poel went a bit too early. But yeah, it was great to see, and I think partly what we were saying, Johnny, you were saying about Pogačar's surprise and checking that it was Vingegaard that was there, is that this is something that we haven't seen. We're not used to seeing from Vingegaard, and he was in charge. Not to say that he is absolutely on top now, but it's a psychological one up. arguably he was as much a winner as Pogačar was yesterday, because he's now put a seed of doubt into their minds, and you can't depend on leaving Vingegaard behind. We have kind of seen this sort of thing from him before, like that stage, the stage 4 or 5 at the 20. The stage win at the Tour de France in 23 when Jai Hindley won, and Van Aert helped to ping Vingegaard off the front in the flat section of the stage. It was a much hillier stage, but he has done this kind of one-day racing type thing before. But this was 6 kilometres from the finish on what was almost guaranteed to be a sprint stage, and that was really exciting.
The other thing that I thought was fun, and basically the whole of the Dauphiné, especially yesterday, was getting everyone excited for the Tour, which is kind of it's fun to have a, that's why they're relaxed after the end of the races, because they know that ultimately doesn't really matter as long as everyone gets across the finish line, everyone's safe, everyone's raced well. But Matteo Jorgensen being used as this guy who's up there, and then they can just like release off the front to cause chaos, and then when you add Wout van Aert into that mix, as you've said, to prize Vingegaard in certain situations, it's maybe the perfect. It's like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, like the Transformers, when they all have to get into they have to combine their powers to defeat the one big enemy of Tadej Pogačar. So I'm glad we got that. Importantly, Jonas Vingegaard has shaved his legs. I've studied the pictures, but so that may have been the key to the performance.
That's
so
why
double
I was able
check.
to come round Van der Poel.
Yes, well, I thought if he hadn't shaved his legs, and maybe that was what cost him in that final sprint. But unfortunately,
well, we were talking about how much of a flex it was that he was like riding around like a triathlete, no shaved legs. I think it would have been an even bigger flex if he did that in the race. So I kind of wish that we saw that. I kind of want to see that someday.
Yeah.
Was it Sagan who decided he wasn't going to shave his legs until he took another win? Or was it that sort of
I remember
situation?
there being a hairy legs moment with Sagan, so maybe.
Yeah.
I do want to see. I want to see Vingegaard in like the tri kit and the short socks too in a race, just to see the flex. See what happens.
So if we come back to the sprinters, did you see what? So if you look at the photos of the finish, it does look like Vingegaard and Pogačar are at the front of a bunch sprint with the big boys behind them. But did you see? So Jake Stewart was the first sprinter to finish behind them. So he took 5th behind Evenepoel. But did you see what Jake Stewart posted on Instagram last night?
I'm going to guess that it was the same as what everyone else was posting online, where they were cropping
but his
the
wording
top 5 and calling them the big 5 of cycling, which I liked.
What he was saying was, someone tell the GC fellas to leave some crumbs for the rest of us.
Oh.
Which I think brings us nicely onto the sprint stage situation.
Before that was a lovely sort of transition. But before we do that, I think one thing that bears mentioning is how out of position Remco was when it all kicked off. But then how he just sort of decided to pedal across, where it looked like no one else could, and he
easy.
Did it easily. But I'm always suspect when things like that happen and everyone suddenly jumps on it, because was it that big of a move? Am I being contrarian for the sake of it?
What was good about what made the move work so well was that it was, everyone had been softened up already, and Vingegaard attacked just as Maxime Van Gies had just been caught, and he was on the front. So it was Van Gies and then a teammate of Vingegaard's, and Vingegaard off the wheel. So there were 3 riders for everyone to come around. So Van der Poel and Pogačar had to follow. It was a hard gap to close anyway, and they had all just closed the gap. So it's that situation where it was a perfectly timed attack. And and Evenepoel was, he was positioned behind obviously Van der Poel, Pogačar, and Buitrago evidently. So he had to make the effort, and maybe everyone else was gassed. We are talking about, he is a top tier rider, so he had to do something. So he was coming from far back. I don't know. It was impressive. It was a good sign.
Okay, it was a good sign.
Are we sort of kind of ignoring Buitrago a little bit here? Because I feel like the fact that he's in this group, maybe he wins the Tour de France.
Maybe Buitrago's going to win this. Yeah, unfortunately, he can't time trial for toffee. But
yeah. Well, I just want to point out that this is the Dauphiné. This is the race where you gotta like lean into that. We did
call him to win the Dauphiné at the end of last week's show.
Yeah.
We were like, obviously he's the winner. So turns out, credit to us, we got lucky with one. One more thing before we move on to this sprint discussion, which I am obviously desperate to talk about. This opening stage of the Dauphiné, where the best riders in the world managed to create a fantastic race out of seemingly not that much, puts into even more context what we've been discussing and calling for months, and so is Richard Plugger, where we need more of the best riders just racing each other. And here's the stat. I've done my research before this podcast. That's how seriously I'm taking the absence of Cayley. Here are the races in which Pogačar, Vingegaard, and Evenepoel have faced each other for the entirety of their careers. We've got 2021 Lombardia, 2022 Tirreno Adriatico, 2022 Flèche Wallonne, and the 2024 Tour de France. And that's it.
Wow.
How many of those were they actually really racing each other? Because the 2021 Lombardia,
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Well, and like Tirreno, everything. And then if you add Roglic into the mix, which seems fair, he's won a lot of Grand Tours and also Vueltas.
And
Then it's
also
the only.
Oh,
then
man.
it's only.
Johnny.
Then it's only the 2024 Tour de France. So literally last year was the first time. That's appalling. We're not a serious sport. Like
bit
the
bonkers.
Well,
guy,
to be fair, with Evenepoel in there, it makes it a little tricky because he's young. He had.
is he that young though?
Well, he's young
not
and he
that
was
much
injured
younger
for a
than
while,
the
so he missed a lot. I bet if you did just Pogačar and Vingegaard, you'd get a little bit more. I would guess, but
Yeah,
I
you get a couple of Basque countries in there. You do,
Yeah.
but you need at least three. I don't want
You
to
gotta
get
have three.
greedy, but you want to have three guys.
I found myself playing devil's advocate about this over the weekend. When I was thinking ahead to the Dauphiné, I was thinking this Dauphiné has obviously got an absolutely bonkers start list. And I was looking at and seeing that, people like Julian Alaphilippe and Skermos has got a stomach bug, so that makes sense. He's going over to the Swiss. But Julian Alaphilippe, his team is Swiss, so why they would want him there. But also, stage wins are going to be available at the Tour de Suisse, and they are not going to be available at the Dauphiné, as Jonathan Milan has just found out. He's going to go and win stage 2 now. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, I was just thinking how while it is obviously, and my real opinion is that it's great that we're getting this prelude to the Tour, especially after what we saw on stage 1. But there could be an argument for that complete unknown going into the beginning of the Tour de France, where, just say Pogačar had gone to Slovenia and absolutely rinsed everything and made himself look incredible, as he always does. We know he's incredible anyway. But to see them both, it just say Pogačar absolutely destroys Vingegaard at the Dauphiné. Yes, that gives us the underdog storyline, but maybe it kind of makes the Tour go, a little bit before we've even got there.
I actually really like that, though. I think in general, the past few years, this wasn't always true, but I think the past few years, the Dauphiné hasn't acted as much as a sign of what's to come in the Tour quite as much. There was a stretch where it was like Froome won the Dauphiné, Froome won the Tour, Froome won the Dauphiné. It was like
except that there
year
are a few Fuglsang wins and a Talansky win in there as well.
And in the past few years, we've gotten Fuglsang, we've gotten like Danny Martinez, the races where they didn't actually necessarily tell us what was going to happen at the Tour, but we still talk about it like it's going to, and that's fun, right?
Yeah,
I don't know that
fun.
If Vingegaard gets rinsed at this race, I don't know that actually means it's all over for him for the Tour.
And it also gives you the extra storyline where he's got a comeback on his hands. Yeah.
Builds
so
potential.
like I said, I was arguing with myself.
Yeah.
And my actual opinion is that this is really great. And yes, and as we found out yesterday, we now know that Pogačar can't look at those first several stages that they all look rather like the stages at the Dauphiné. He can't look at those and go, I can get rid of Vingegaard because Vingegaard has found some punch. And as long as none of them crash.
Don't even put that into the universe kit, please.
Well, you already have with spin cycles, so I don't feel too guilty.
Did I? I thought
basically said something about keeping them upright. Or maybe it was actually it might have been Cayley yesterday. Anyway, somebody said it.
I was going to be worried there because I literally published that half an hour ago and had already forgotten that. The one downside I would also say that's specific to us about these guys making any bike race interesting is that we're recording this with 40 kilometers to go in stage 2 of the Dauphiné, and I am experiencing a lot of anxiety about if something crazy happens and then this podcast immediately dates. But we're just not going to think about that.
Stage 1 still happened.
Stage 1 still happened, and we are now gonna zoom out. Was yesterday proof of something that maybe we've been thinking in the back of our minds for a while, that we should just get rid of sprint stages. The Tour de France seems to kind of already be trying to do this by putting a lot of these punchy little climbs as launch pads for your Julian Alaphilippe type riders to escape a charging peloton.
I'm all on board with getting rid of obvious, no doubt sprint stages.
Yeah.
Also,
And I actually
sprint
don't know
stages.
that the tour has done that. And I mean, I think they're maybe getting away from it a little bit because they're used to have more frequently like the 220K flat stage.
For
I remember
5
there was
days in a row at the start.
they
of
had
the
the
race.
2018 tour, the Geraint Thomas tour, where they did this stage. They were in Chartres, maybe it was like Fougères to Chartres, and it was the longest, most boring stage. And I just remember like I went into the Chartres Cathedral and just like looked around for like an hour, and I came back out and nothing had changed, and it was like, oh. Actually, I kind of like this because it gives me a chance to do what I want to do while I'm here. But that's not actually like working and doing a job. Let me go back. I eventually go back to the press room, and the big story of the day was like all of the journalists asking the riders how bored they were. Like every site had a story about like, and riders were complaining it was boring. That's how bad it was. And we're getting away from that a little bit.
Fault. It's their fault if it's boring.
Who's going to make anything happen on a 220K flat stage with no cobbles, right? But I do think we're getting away from that a little bit, which is good. We still have pan flat days though, and I am on board if we can kind of change that a little bit, because what I want is like a San Remo type day where yes, the sprinters can still win.
Yeah, I just want to chase.
Yeah, but I want there to be some jeopardy, right? And like that to me is what could be a still good sprint stage, is if I don't know from the gun that it's going to be a sprint stage.
Agreed. I think like with your example there, Dane, if it is going to be a pan flat stage, then they have to signpost that with some nominative determinism from the finish line town name.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Like anything in mind?
That just Chartres. That's
Short.
I see.
I knew that's what.
yeah.
I could
I
tell
wasn't
that
sure if
was
that
in
made
your
across the
head.
divide.
Well, I'm
Did you
thinking CHAR, but now I'm seeing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, I think, look, times evolve. There are certain things that the sport doesn't do. I think the one thing that you could argue to keep them in is if you had the spectrum of sprinters we used to have, where they had, they were these flamboyant characters who made up for the lack of maybe action on their days with being larger than life characters, who would then provide so many talking points after the stage that it would be worth the boredom and then the quick, rush of the last few kilometers and then the fallout afterwards of everyone kind of, speaking ill about each other.
I think that is kind of one thing we're missing with like the world class shouting at his mechanic rider that we.
Well, we got Philipsen.
Well, I don't think he comes close in terms of the anger.
He keeps his shouting to the team bus where he just shouts "Unmöglich."
I do
and
like
over and
Philipsen.
over
I
and
think
over
he's
again.
got a little bit of personality, but
Yeah,
I don't
mind him. He
doesn't come close to the Manx.
doesn't get me
He's
out of bed
more
in the morning.
angry
Next
than
missile.
flamboyant. Does he not?
He's Phillips. Okay, to steal an analogy from the Thick of It TV show, Philipsen is kids' gloves and Mark Cavendish is kids' gloves, but made with real kids. You know what I mean? Just like I do need Mark Cavendish. I need your Peter Sagans. Even did Kittel ever get into it? Not really.
Kittel was just smiling and good hair. That was his kind of thing.
But then he fit in because you had these other characters. It wasn't. I couldn't really tell you from the current crop of the big sprinters who's discernible.
Your pure sprinters. You've got Dylan Groenewegen, who's fine. You've got I mean, Jonathan Milan seems like he's not really even a pure sprinter. He's becoming more and more a pure sprinter.
He can be Kittel-esque in the actual way he races, but
Yeah.
I don't
Mads
know.
Pedersen probably is the one where it's like he's got.
Headed. Yeah, but he's more of a Sagan-esque. He can do classics. He's not a pure out and out. Going to struggle into. I mean, Fabio Jakobsen. Maybe the reason, I don't know. Maybe one of the elements of jeopardy in a Grand Tour is you need to have sprinters so that you get when Vingegaard and Pogačar are just killing each other in the mountains. You need to know what's going on at the back. You need the negative, the sad racing. It's like, are they going to make it to the finish? Like that fantastic episode of Unchained where we were just spending ages, like the longest 5 minutes of history when Jakobsen was crawling up that I can't even remember where it was, but it was
somewhere steep,
somewhere very, very horrible and mountainous and hot. But yeah. No, I mean, sprint stages are an opportunity to, gather yourself, I think. And
to visit the cathedral.
I find them, exactly, go for a bike ride or, get some work done. But I don't know, I think maybe there's an element of you need to really enjoy the big stages. You need the peaks and troughs. You need mountains and valleys, peaks and valleys. But, and let's face it, I mean, we've seen several times of when in Grand Tours, even on stages that look like they've got something interesting going on in the finale, they send someone like, I don't know, like today, at stage 2 of the Dauphiné, Paul Orsolin, Cofidis rider, was in a solo breakaway.
Yeah.
And the peloton just goes, nope, we're not, nobody's having any fun today.
Just
We're
him.
taking it easy. And so it would happen on the days that we look at the parkour and think, oh, this could be fun. There'd still be some easing off because it's 21 stages.
Paul Orsolin of Cofidis solo breakaway is so like Tour de France stage 4 coded it hurts. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to get exactly that on one of those.
He was in the breakaway on stage
stages.
1 as well. So he's clearly doing the KOM hunting. There are several 4th and 3rd category climbs early in the stage.
He is the KOM, isn't he? I think he's currently.
Well, yes, that's exactly my point. Yeah. All he's doing is going on a solo breakaway just to hoover up some points and get
That's
some.
fun.
I don't know.
Good for Paul Orsolin.
Yeah.
Any more Dauphiné thoughts? I did not expect when we finished recording on Friday to have had this much fun and have so many thoughts and just enjoyment.
We should go back to a point that you made about how we are now it's 38K to go in the stage, so we don't know what's going to happen on stage 2. So by the time you listen, Jonathan Milan could have won the stage.
Yeah. Vingegaard and Pogačar could both have crashed.
Yeah. So who knows what's going to happen? We're going to have to come back to it.
We will.
Yeah.
Well that's the Dauphiné. Let's take a quick break. Some other things that happened on the weekend. Demi Vollering won Catalonia, 4th stage race of the year for her, 4th win, all of them in Spain. So perfect record, quite satisfying for her and anyone who likes going on Pro Cycling Stats. But did you see what happened on the final stage?
I did because I wrote about it.
Did you? Okay, tell us, Ket, what happened. It was quite shocking. I'd say medium to large amounts of shock.
Well, she did a lead out for Lois Adegeest, who's a good punchy rider. And Adegeest went and won the stage, which makes it a clean sweep for FDJ Suez at Catalonia. But unfortunately, Vollering, who then finished 6th, she raised her hands off the bars as Adegeest won, which of course means, naughty. You're not allowed to celebrate a teammate's win when you haven't crossed the line yet. Yeah, no fun allowed. And then, of course, she, I really appreciated her Instagram story. She said, oops, sorry, but it's a good picture, eh?
It is a good picture. It's probably worth it. So what was it? It was 100 Swiss francs.
100 Swiss
that's
francs.
Like $80 or something.
I think 3 points in the... 3 points deducted and relegation to the last rider in the group, which is typical of relegation in that sort of situation. So she's finished on the same time as she would have done. Not that it would have mattered if they docked her 2 minutes, because she was already leading by 2 minutes and 8 seconds over her teammate Elise Chabi.
I'm looking at the photo. Like, did she take just one hand off the bars?
Yeah, it was this.
Yeah,
I feel like one hand seems pretty.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's obviously ridiculous. It's mad.
I get taking both hands off the bars, quick, decelerating really fast. I can understand why that might be a problem, but this seemed pretty chill.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, that's
I want to cover some more of the women's cycling that happened at the weekend, but I think it would make more sense to talk about another UCI decision that happened after we'd finished recording the previous episode, but I think it happened on Friday, where Rui Oliveira got DQ'd in Slovenia. Did you see this?
I did.
I can't decide what I think about it because it does look not that bad. And
I saw a meme, which I think you'll appreciate. Yeah. I'm about to talk about football, Johnny, or soccer, Dane.
Wow.
I saw a meme, and it might even have been our friend Cosmo. But so there was a frame of a footballer diving, doing the whole kind of footballer playing it up to get the other team, to get the referee to pay attention to what's just happened and maybe card them. And so I think was it Fabio Kristin who's in the leader's jersey Q36.5, not the UAE version.
That's Jan Kristin. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Yes. So he was sprinting alongside the barriers, and Oliveira was coming up alongside him, and so Oliveira kind of jinks to the left slightly, but there's still loads and loads and loads of space. He probably moves over maybe half a foot, maybe. No, I don't think it was even a whole foot, but there was plenty of space still. But Kristin immediately throws his hand in the air, and there was a huge furore afterwards, obviously. We love to do that against the UCI riders. I mean, Oliveira's twin brother then went and won on Sunday, and they were all holding up 2 fingers saying 2 stage wins, which of course was not
I'm not sure
accurate.
about that.
But yeah, so he was DQ'd for his deviation.
A simulation works is the moral of the story. Like if you flail around good enough, well enough, people will.
What do they call that in the NBA? They have that in the NBA, don't they? What's it called?
Flopping.
Flopping, that's it.
It's flopping. Diving in football. Yeah.
There was a certain amount of histrionics from UAE as well.
Yes, definitely.
Which maybe, I think it speaks to, I think Rui Oliveira posted about how much the victory meant to him after his tough year, and he's going to count it and stuff like that. There's also a great scene where Oliveira has been led to like the jury, like their version of the meth camper that they had over in Slovenia, basically, and just how uncomfortable the jury person looked going past all of the media cameras, just being like, this is not, instant regret on the decision.
Did you see the post that Oliveira put on Instagram, and that the Tour of Slovenia social media manager or intern or whoever liked it? Just liked it. They put a little green heart in the comments. and obviously, if you look at the replies under that, people are like, wait, what?
That is
Why?
mad. That is great.
That particularly tickled me.
It's all kicking off. I mean, look, it beats Rafael Majka and Tadej Pogačar. I think it was Majka, where they're doing rock, paper, scissors so you can win the stages of Slovenia. That was egregious.
That was a bit mockery. I imagine Tour of Slovenia was a little bit miffed that no big names, not even Mohoric was there this year. I imagine they were a little bit upset that the talent didn't come, apart from Groenewegen, who completely bossed the sprints. But it made for a much better race. Yeah, there was proper action.
That's sort of how it works, right? There was
lots of twins, brothers action, actually, because it was the other Johannesson twin as well. There's a Johannesson, Tobias Johannesson,
I was confused
who's been
about
to both
that.
Tours de France.
He's got a brother as well.
Anders Johannesson was
confusing.
the winner of the Tour of Slovenia. He's never raced the Tour de France, so maybe we're going to have doppelgangers at the Tour this year, but this time it'll be the Johannesson versions.
Well, and Theo Gegenhardt was third, 19 seconds back.
I really hoped he was going to, I don't know, it was a good race for him. And he did a lead out yesterday for Baggioli.
Yeah,
so that's fun.
There we have it.
GC riders doing lead outs.
Yeah. he'll be at the Swiss. He's one of the few big names. I mean, there's a few big names, but just not nearly as many as the Dauphiné. But
he's tour bound, isn't he? As well.
That's the plan. Sure. Yeah.
There we are. The other women's racing, it was actually on the BBC iPlayer over the weekend. Although you had to dig around to find it, they were really not promoting it at all. It was I didn't enjoy that so much.
The graphics were terrible as well. But anyway,
graphics are bad. That's the one guarantee though of those sort of nationally broadcast racing in the UK is that the graphics are often bad. You have either like a weird gap or a distance.
Much time
you
has
can't have
elapsed.
both.
It's like it doesn't make.
Yeah, that's like watching the Olympics or Commonwealth Games, isn't it? Where it's just like, here's the amount of time that they've been doing an activity, and they always. I think it may be just because the UK can be jury, but they never seem to have their cameras never seem to be like color corrected to the right setting to make it look nicer. Whereas like you watch the Tour de France and they've literally set the colors up to like smack you in the face. Whereas UK, it's just like, no, that is what that's what the Northeast looks like. You're gonna watch it. But that was a good end to the race. Unfortunately, brave British girl Kat Ferguson was pipped at the last.
She did get a stage win though.
Did get a stage win,
and it was her stage win was on an incredibly dramatic day, and Lorena Wiebes was very cross.
What was she cross about?
Well, because it rained and the UCI didn't do anything about safety.
I thought it was quite amusing. Kat Ferguson after the stage said that she loved it, had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
she really
it's a second
enjoyed it.
win of the year in those conditions as well.
Yeah.
She won the Var Classic in those conditions as well. But but there was both the previous stage winners crashed out that day. Like 30% of the peloton crashed during Saturday's stage, so it was quite brutal. And there was when I was looking for photos for the wrap yesterday, there's a photo of Mara Roldan, the stage 2 winner, Canadian 21-year-old from Picnic Post-Tunnel. Picnic Post-Tunnel's first win of the year, if you don't count the Colombian national champion. So it's the first team win of the year, really, that they've done, certainly in Europe. But there's a picture of Mara Roldan lying on the ground with her left leg, her femur, bent over. So her knees are touching, but her hips are apart. And Lizzie Deignan, not her teammate, but Lizzie Deignan, it was her last Tour of Britain. She's holding her hand in India. I mean, it's awful.
Oh God!
It's sometimes I think we don't need to see these things, and that was a perfect example of that. So it was a brutal stage, and yes, we might have had a point, but maybe she just was desperate to get back into the camper and out of her white skin suit. But yeah, I mean, it was a really dynamic stage, and what was really interesting about it was dynamic race. There's loads going on, and what was great was SD Worx didn't win until the final stage, and it was another GC win for FDJ Suez, which have completely dominated this year, as we've already discussed, Vollering. So it sets up nicely for the summer.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Mark Maddy will be shaking his fist, thinking, why can't he have that?
Have some luck over on my side, yeah.
We'll talk about this maybe. Well, there's not much to talk about, but we'll touch on it after dark. We may or may not have managed to gain access to Tour de France Unchained early, and there may or may not be a lot of Frenchness in the first episode. But
that's what we like.
I think we'll take another quick break, set ourselves, and then get into the
before
final
we
parts.
take a break, let's remind everyone that if you want to hear more about women's racing, that's been fantastic lately. Go over, listen to We'll Talk. Abby and co, I'm sure, will be waxing lyrical about the great racing we've been seeing.
Thank you, Kit. I had completely forgotten to say that. But yeah, let's now take a break. We're back in a sec. Slight corrections corner. Not necessarily our fault. It's more reporting has come out. We mentioned how Fabio Jakobsen might have been headed to the Tour, which I think was his words. Picnic personnel, his team have now come out being like, no, that's not going to happen. He's not going to be recovered in time, and neither is John Degenkolb, sadly, who crashed at the Tour of Flanders. And Jakobsen's also not going to the Vuelta. Well,
this is following medical advice, because I remember when he was first back on the bike outside a few weeks ago. There were doctors' comments around the same time, or an announcement from the team, or I don't know, it might have been an interview in a paper, I can't remember. But basically, a doctor had advised him that he needs to take it really steady so that he can heal properly, and that the Tour de France would definitely not be on the cards, and the Vuelta would be unlikely as well. But it's good that he's clearly very keen.
Well, he's so keen that he was like, hopefully I might be able to make it to the Tour of Guangxi later in the year. Which, I think he has been there before.
He's a 2-time stage winner there.
Yes. So Tour of Guangxi is first time you look forward to doing it, but then next time you go, like, I've kind of, I've done it. I've seen it.
He wants to raise his hands again, which would be good to see.
I've pulled up his stats. He has not won a World Tour race since 2023, so I can imagine he has that desire to go, whatever the World Tour race might be, up to and including the Tour of Guangxi. You can see why he'd be so keen to do it.
He'll get some stages at the Renui Tour. Do a 1-week stage race instead of the Vuelta.
Yes. Lovely Renui Tour. I have a Peter Sagan update for you if you'd like.
Yes, please.
So this update comes in 2 parts. The first is that after he finished his Dancing with the Stars show, don't know where he came, not important.
3rd or 4th, something like that. It was pretty high up there, something like that.
I didn't realize you'd been paying attention.
Oh, I checked, because my Instagram feed was every damn day.
Algorithms.
It was popping. Did you see? Well, if you've been following his Instagram so closely, did you see that he's been in a stage play as well?
I didn't quite get what was happening, and I didn't look into it. So
I think basically his pals were like, he'd either produced or was starring in this stage play, and they invited him into like a little cameo.
Got it.
Like when you had like Brad Pitt being like half an episode of Friends. I think it was that sort of vibe.
Okay.
But I like that he's like, feeling out what retirement looks like for him with these extracurriculars before getting back into some cycling. And he was at the Castelli 24-hour relay race in Italy.
Not just Caleb Ewan was doing that as well, possibly.
Oh, was he? Well, Sagan was doing it, but with a bunch of his old Liquid Gas teammates, and even better than that, they all got like jerseys made up to bring back the old days. But you had all the old guys there. It was great. But the big problem is that apparently one of them forgot to turn on their transponder, so their result might not even count.
Oh no,
that's gotta hurt.
That's got to be the one thing that you do before you do one of those races. But yeah, I think Kaylee talks about doing these relay races with intern Nick, so maybe we need to get them over for the Castelli 24 Hour to race against Peter Sagan.
That'd be great.
The final item I have on the run sheet, this for the main show, is there was a great interview with Luke Rowe in The Guardian, which pains me because he's, as I've said before, he's my golden goose. Is the golden goose the right word? White whale.
He's your white whale.
My white whale. What's the
golden
goose?
Goose would be the one giving you lots of interviews.
Okay. So Fred Wright's my golden goose.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. He's my golden goose. Luke Rowe's my white whale. What I think the key to this interview that was in The Guardian is that it was a reader interview. So it's like reader submitted questions that then he could answer. So you might have thought that means it would just all be like, how many times do you eat during the Tour de France stage? Oh, how do you go to the bathroom when you're on a bike? Like all that. It's not that. He actually kind of goes for it a bit and actually gives real opinions to real questions.
I've always liked Luke Rowe as a I've never interviewed him, but I've always liked how he seems to be. I mean, I'm sure he's in media training, but he seems like one of those riders, like Geraint Thomas sometimes, except when he's in GC mode, where they're just like, screw the media training, I'm just going to be myself and say what I like. Even if that sometimes includes with Luke Rowe punching someone mid-race. But he does seem like a bit of a maverick, which is to be celebrated.
I think so. He brings up a few different discussion points, which I think then we can weigh in on. Seeing as Kaylee always likes, he doesn't want them to have all their fun in their, as he says, little podcast, which is one of the funniest things he said all year, and I keep on thinking about it. It's just like need to delve in.
Do you think maybe it's because they're usually half dressed or on a massage on a massage table?
It is often like Geraint Thomas laying down without a shirt on.
Laurens de Plus from this angle.
But that I've interviewed Geraint Thomas before, like on a Zoom, where like he'll log on and it will be that angle. So he's doing that whole like when you can sit or whatever. What's the thing again? Where like you shouldn't stand, you should sit. You
shouldn't sit, you should lie down.
That's it. Whatever that one. Someone will correct us however it was. But anyway, so Luke Rowe, unsurprisingly, comes out against cobbles in Grand Tour stages, saying there's too much risk, and he's seen from the inside how hard the GC guys work to get ready for these Grand Tours.
Is that just because he was? No, he raced with Geraint Thomas for GC, didn't he? I was going to say, is it just Froome?
There was that one year where Froome broke both. Both arms, both wrists or whatever. Yeah.
And his argument is then like if you have these quote unquote dangerous stages, and then you lose one of the like a Vingegaard or Pogačar, then that lessens the whole race. So then it's actually not
that year that Froome broke his wrists though was that he withdrew before they reached the cobbles. He'd broken his wrists the day before.
He broke the first one, and then I think he broke the second one.
No, I don't think he did. They hadn't reached the cobbles yet.
Okay. Oh no, that's right. It was in the fight for position right before the cobbled section. That's what it was. Yeah,
and it was very, 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 very wet. I remember the pictures very clearly. Too. Yeah, it's horrible.
But I don't buy that at all.
No, I think it's bollocks.
I'm saying
Well, we've talked about this. Yeah, we've talked about this before. The whole kind of risk thing, and we talked about it during after the gravel stage of the Giro. There's always risk. The whole point of being a GC rider is managing risk. So I think Luke Rowe's actually speaking through his media training there. Maybe
I don't know. I actually don't think his point's a bad one. I don't know that I agree with it, but I feel like it's a point that you can make. I don't know. I think if suddenly you lose the big favorite of the race kind of can lose something. It can also get a lot more interesting. Obviously, we saw that at the Giro when the best riders in the world weren't there. That is an interesting race. But minor league baseball can be interesting too, but it's still minor league baseball. So I kind of want to see the best riders going up against each other, and there is that risk.
But there's risk in bunch sprints as well, and there's
right. But we try to mitigate that by basically saying, hey, you can actually finish at the back, and that's fine. And even if you crash in the last X kilometers, that's also fine. And
we're getting into a completely different debate, really, aren't we?
The other option is that you go more the Savannah Bananas route, and then you just start singing in between innings, which I wouldn't hate to see that either, to be honest.
I mean, their Instagram account is wild.
It's unreal.
Lots, and I don't see that on the Tour de France.
I could see Julian Alaphilippe doing that. We've seen him
dancing,
bust out his virtual pipes before and dancing. Yeah. We'll suggest that to the Big Watch guys over at Tudor.
Big Watch.
The next little thing that he said was, the question was, do you think riders are too guarded around journalists now? Don't we need to keep newcomers excited and intrigued about the sport? Luke Rowe says 100%. Back in the day with Mark Cavendish, he's saying, for his example, like so many fewer cares were given with the interview questions. He says the big downfall has been social media, which is kind of obvious. Just saying how hostile it is. And basically, if you say anything interesting or have an opinion, everyone just tears you down. And yeah, we're probably guilty of this a lot of the time. Like, and with the Simon Yates, everyone should be shitting themselves before the Giro. That probably like gets taken too far by certain things. I think we appreciate him saying that. He says, basically everyone's like, all the riders are just so cautious in what they say.
Well, have you seen
he's like, even he
supercuts
gets bored by it.
Yeah, you've seen the supercuts of the day by day just at the Giro.
Oh no!
The people
How long is it? How long is it?
Right?
15 minutes.
Luke Rowe saying back in the day, he's pointing to like one of the most, I don't know, what's the word to describe the way that Cavendish is with the media? Whatever it is, he's one of the most of it. Yeah. But at the same time, like Luke Rowe's day, we also had Froome, and Froome was pretty reserved with the media, very polite, nice with the media, but like he didn't say a lot. Frequently, he didn't say a lot. And there's guys have been like Dan Martin was king of day by day. That was like 2014 was when his day by day peak started, and that was a while ago. It's not a new thing.
But media training probably has become more of a thing because of social media.
Yeah, that's true. And teams have like 4 press officers now.
Yes.
Do you think you could track riders in terms of how well they're doing their career by how many times they say day by day?
Yes,
do you think there's a direct correlation?
Yeah. That and Primož Roglič going, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's as bad as it's ever been in terms of the quality of answers from Ryder, or do you think it has been worse before?
I couldn't say.
I do think it probably is a little worse now than when I started. I feel
like
before
we had a few intervening years. I would say 2022, in my mind, seemed pretty bad.
There are, I mean, yeah.
That was a Vingegaard Tour year?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I do certainly find that it's a day to celebrate, and it's infrequent when we, because we spend a lot of time in the content mines during big races, and you're looking for good quotes, or you're watching the conferences and you're picking out good quotes. The number of times there's a good enough quote that you couldn't have pre-written, it's like 1 in 10, if not less. But I don't know that. I mean. Maybe it's partly the media training. Maybe it's partly that cycling has got more and more and more, marginal gains oriented. And yes, we've kind of gone over the peak of marginal gains into slightly better, maybe full body health, including the brain, including the mind. Tadej Pogačar and his cake and beers, not beers, but he'll have his G&T or his beer before the last night of a big bike race.
Yeah,
and
before
have a chat with, but there's that sort of that we have now kind of tipped into the slightly more. You can be a character on social media rather than just really be careful, guys. And so I think maybe I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of talking myself into the belief that actually maybe it is starting to get better. And I mean, Roglič has got much more interesting. He's always been somewhat interesting and. Partly
he's more relaxed. He's less tense, and so he probably feel more comfortable.
And his answers, I mean, none of them were particularly groundbreaking. But when he was ambushed at the end of stages, he always had a massive smile on his face and just gave a kind of, I don't know, it's just like it was kind of a wink, nudge situation. And I think they're starting to realise that actually they need to have some sort of character, and they are entertainers. And that's probably coming through the fastidious media training. They're actually realising, no, our job is more than just pedaling.
They've got to film YouTube videos, don't they? They've all got YouTube behind the scenes vlogs, so they've got to, they've got to dance for the camera. Yeah,
I remember when Green Edge was that was a cool thing that Green Edge did. Now everyone has their own video. But I think the other thing we got to keep in mind is, yes, we're talking about maybe there's a stretch of boring years. Hopefully we're out of it. I don't know. But we also, right now, compared to 15 years ago, certainly 15 years ago, 10 years ago, there are far fewer frequently winning native English speakers as well, and that might correlate. Like Roglič is an example of this. Like in the early years of Roglic's career, we're talking about a guy who's talking in his second language in all of his, maybe even the third language in all of his interviews. And so if that's what we're generally watching, that's going to be a little bit different from Brad Wiggins, right, or Mark Cavendish, any number of Americans who. Like Americans, just like we stopped winning men's bike races for, I don't know, like 10 years there. I think we as English speakers might have been spoiled by I don't know if I'd call them eloquent, but they certainly gave good quotes.
Characters,
English speakers there for a nice stretch in the 2000s, 2010s. Yeah.
The final thing I want to discuss from his interview was that this was just an interesting insight into what he prefers about, because he's now a sports director at Decathlon Age2R, this Luke Rowe, compared to when he was at Ineos. He said, one thing I prefer at Decathlon is the real human nature in the team. They really care about the individual and the person. Any staff member, any rider they see as an asset and you've got to perform. But beyond that, they pull back the curtain a bit and ask, how are you as a human? How's the family? And he likes that. That's maybe he doesn't mean it that way, and maybe it sounds worse written down. But that seems like a pretty damning indictment of a team that he was at for like his entire career.
Yeah. Nobody ever asked him how he was feeling when he was at Sky.
I can't imagine Luke Rowe answering that anyway.
No, and also I think Luke Rowe needs to remember that for a long time there he was like the road captain, and he could do what he wants in the team. So if he wanted to ask people how they were, he could have.
It also, I mean, obviously we were seeing it mediated through one show, but I didn't feel like the vibes were particularly like, "Hey man, how you doing?" At the Ben O'Connor Tour de France situation with the team. They did not seem to really care that much as maybe they should have about his well-being. But that was a long time ago.
Well, the difference now is they've got our friend from ASO, Pierre Muglac, who is the nicest French young man ever. So I think that Luke Rowe is basically talking about Pierre.
They have had a bit of obviously not a complete rebrand, but since the brown shorts, which I still miss, RIP. But
the vibe is better with the Decathlon money.
Is a lot better. I think Ben O'Connor never fit there. He was there kind of as the brown shorts were outgoing, wasn't he? And he couldn't speak French when he arrived, so he didn't start in the right place.
I wonder if the French media talk about how boring things were getting at that period because
the focus was on somebody who they couldn't talk to.
Bingo.
Yeah. The I don't know about you guys, but I think that might be it for the regular show. There's also we as well for After Dark, which is obviously the continuation of the show, but it's behind the paywall for our valued members. There was also a little tidbit that's been released and that's been picked up by Danish media, where in the Netflix Unchained, there's a little clip that shows Tadej Pogačar swearing at Jonas Vingegaard, which they are obviously slightly incensed about. So I think we should unpick that a bit, as well as talking a bit about, the rest of it and what we expect. Anyway, I think that's it. That was, from a personal perspective, I had a good time with you guys. It felt less enjoyable because I've had to steer the rudder. So you've always got to be looking out for like low hanging branches and riptides. But thank you very much. Nothing's happened to Dauphiné yet, so we're safe.
Romain Bardet is off the front attacking as we speak.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, the
tickets
just come.
Race.
He doesn't have a lot of a gap yet, but this could go.
I think he probably should think about saving himself at some point. He's attacked both past these days. If he wants to win a stage, maybe he just wants to be on the front. Anyway, yeah. Good old Romain Bardet.
Well,
I think you've done a good job, Johnny.
Thanks. I wasn't fishing for that, but there's always just a bit of. There's always just a bit of.
I'm just trying to soothe your self-doubt, which is always present in these occasions. Your main job, apart from having to write everything over the weekend, is making sure that I can host a podcast and making sure I don't do anything that gets in trouble in the newsletter. CSOW workload. But thank you guys. No. If you're not signed up as a member yet, this would actually be the week to do it, because then us three can take all of the credit. Yes, do.
Then maybe Kaylee will give us like an extra half an hour lunch break or something. He'd have to ask and check the bylaws, but now would be the time. Sign up, email him being like, "Hey Kaylee, I've been on the fence since launch 2 or 3 years ago, but those 2 podcasts in the week when you went there were so good that I had to sign up."
Yeah, you not hosting is the reason that we signed up, is what they're basically getting at. Yeah.
I think it's worth a shot. It could happen, it could not. Probably won't happen. But if you listen for free, this would be the week to do it. Right, I'll stop waffling now. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you both for joining me. And I'll see you in After Dark in a few seconds.